Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Global. We'll get you the top stories from India and the region. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. And for news from the rest of the world, I'm joined by my colleague in London, Ollie Barrett. Ollie, what big stories are you tracking today?
There's a lot going on, Shubhendu. It's 11:30 here in London, 12:30 p.m. across Central Europe. Coming up in the next half an hour, talks about Ukraine and the Middle East in Davos. We will also hear from Guatemala, where there's a new president, and Rishi Sunak will update UK MPs about military action against Houthi rebels. First, the headlines.
Pacific island of Nauru cuts ties with Taipei and turns to Beijing. Taiwan accuses China of post-election ploy. India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar, on a visit to Iran, begins engagements with talks on Chabahar Port and International North-South Transport Corridor. And national security advisors of several countries meet in Davos to discuss peace formula for Ukraine. Kremlin says nothing can be achieved without Russia's participation. Taiwan President-elect Lai Ching-te told visiting delegation of former senior U.S. officials that he hoped United States would continue to support Taiwan. He said his administration will continue to defend peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait.
I hope the United States can continue to support Taiwan and deepen cooperation between the United States and Taiwan for our mutual benefit, for the safety and prosperity of the region. We are thankful for the United States' long-term support of Taiwan. I believe our relationship will advance in a stable direction through our continuous hard work and become an important force to safeguard the peace and prosperity of the Indo-Pacific.
Taiwan has hailed its close and staunch partnership with the United States. President Tsai Ing-wen said this as she welcomed a delegation sent by U.S. President Joe Biden's government to make a post-election visit. Meanwhile, Taiwan has broken its official diplomatic relations with the tiny Pacific island nation of Nauru. Taiwan's move came after Nauru said it will sever diplomatic relations with Taiwan and recognize China instead.
In order to maintain our sovereignty and dignity, we have decided from this very day to end diplomatic relations with Nauru, halt bilateral plans for cooperation, withdraw the embassy and repatriate technical personnel, and will demand for Nauru to shut its embassy in Taiwan. Just as many democratic countries around the world congratulate Taiwan's victory in democracy by successfully holding an election, Beijing authorities decided to suppress Taiwan in this manner and launched an attack on international order and stability. This is revenge on the value of democracy and also a challenge against the global order. China has been deliberately trying to lure our diplomatic allies over the years.
World leaders are gathering in Davos to discuss global economic and socio-political developments of the day. Ollie Barrett is in London, gives us more on this and other stories making headlines around the world. Ollie, the Davos meet is coming at a critical time.
I think that's right, Shubhendu. It absolutely is. The annual Davos meeting certainly is coming at an important moment. It is the 54th annual meeting of the World Economic Forum, which is beginning today in Davos. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken, French President Emmanuel Macron and key West Asian leaders will be in attendance. Ongoing conflicts in West Asia and Ukraine are atop the agenda for officials. A challenging global economic picture as well, with shifting interest rate policies and rising debt, is also confronting central bankers, financiers and business leaders who are there. And the national security advisors of several countries met in Davos on Sunday to discuss a possible peace formula for Ukraine. This was the fourth NSA's meeting on the peace formula proposed by the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in 2022, which follows 10 principles aimed at ensuring a just and lasting peace in Ukraine. The Kremlin said on Monday that the talks in Davos on the Ukrainian peace proposals will achieve nothing because Russia is not participating in the discussions. Ukraine says it will not rest until every Russian soldier is ejected from its territory, and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has decreed that any talks with Russia are illegal. So let's go now live to DD India's Megami Lim, who joins us from Kiev. Megami, President Zelensky delivering a speech at the WEF in person. What is he hoping to achieve?
Well, the spotlight on Ukraine has definitely dimmed after almost 2 years of war and as the conflict in the Middle East continues. So this is another opportunity for Zelensky to keep the spotlight on Ukraine and convince world leaders and Ukraine's international partners that Ukraine deserves continued backing from its partners and continued funding and support as the fighting is continuing on along the front lines in the south and in the east, although it has largely turned positional and static. This forum comes against the backdrop of, as we understand, continued divisions in the United States over continued funding for Ukraine, and also as the EU has failed to push through its 50 billion euros of funding that it was planning to send to Ukraine over a 4-year period after it failed to get a unanimous vote during the last EU summit. And Ukraine is running out of ammunition and even interceptor missiles. The Pentagon recently said that it will struggle to continue providing interceptor missiles for Ukraine's air defense systems. And we have noticed here that the interception rate has gone down in recent days as Russia continues to launch air attacks against Ukraine. And we have also seen the Institute of the Study of War release a report that Russia is preparing for a renewed offensive, waiting for the grounds to freeze over in the south and in the east, even as Ukraine continues to face shortages of ammunition. So it is of utmost importance for Zelensky to continue to try and shore up more support from its international partners, which is his aim today as he delivers his speech.
OK, Megami, is there any room at the moment for peace negotiations between Ukraine and Russia?
Well, there is obviously a clear sense of fatigue, strong sense of fatigue as the war is about to enter its third year. And as I mentioned, fighting is continuing on along the front lines. And soldiers are, of course, very exhausted and tired, but Ukraine has held on to its stance very strongly that it will not rest, as you said earlier, until every Russian soldier is ejected from its territory. And as you mentioned, Zelensky has also decreed that any talks with Russia right now is illegal. So yesterday, Zelensky's chief of staff, Andriy Yermak, presented Zelensky's 10-point peace formula, which was first announced in October of 2022, which clearly calls for the full restoration of Ukraine's territorial integrity. And this is going to be Ukraine's objective for the foreseeable future. We don't see any room for the two countries to enter into any peace negotiations at the moment.
OK, Megami, thank you. Russia, meanwhile, on Sunday claimed that its forces had warded off Ukraine's multiple attacks, while Ukraine said that its armed forces continue their offensive operations. Moscow says its air defences intercepted several rockets and drones from Ukraine. Ukraine says its air force carried out strikes on Russian personnel and equipment positions. Here in the UK, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is set to address MPs for the first time since the UK joined US airstrikes on Houthi targets in Yemen. Some opposition parliamentarians have criticised the Prime Minister for authorising the strikes without a debate or a vote in Parliament. Defence Secretary Grant Shapps says the country's aim is to normalise international shipping operations, and he's defending that decision to strike the Houthis without parliamentary debate, citing the need for self-defence. Monday is day 101 of the Israel-Hamas conflict. Hamas has aired a video allegedly showing Israeli hostages that it is still holding in Gaza. Israel's army has released a video of its forces operating in Khan Yunis in the southern Gaza Strip and uncovering mortars and other munitions.
As Israel marked 100 days since the October 7 attack, Hamas on Monday released a video showing 3 Israeli hostages that they are holding in Gaza. The 37-second video ended with an electronically generated caption, "Tomorrow will inform you of their fate." Thousands of Israelis continue to call for the immediate release of hostages. Despite pouring rain, families of hostages were joined by thousands in a 24-hour-long rally that ended on Sunday night in a Tel Aviv plaza.
This was crime against humanity, not crimes against Israel. It was committed against Israeli, American, German, French. It doesn't matter. They didn't stop and ask who you are and where you live. So yes, I want to say to the leaders of the world, this is your responsibility too, to make sure they're coming back home, all 136 people.
Meanwhile, on Sunday, Israeli army released a video which it says shows its forces operating in the southern Gaza Strip of Khan Yunis and uncovering mortars and other munitions. The video shows gun battles and explosions, as well as soldiers entering buildings through holes in the exterior walls of the building. Relatives and friends of German nationals kidnapped by Hamas militants marched through the center of Berlin to mark 100 days of their captivity.
I want to say that it's been 100 days today. And time, we don't have a lot of time at all. Time is running out. And I feel that we need to do something now.
Meanwhile, Israel launched strikes on Hezbollah targets in Lebanon after a guided missile launched from the other side killed a woman and her son in a village in northern Israel. Earlier, the Israeli military said that they killed 4 heavily armed terrorists trying to enter from Lebanon.
The UK is committing 20,000 military personnel to serve across Europe in a major NATO exercise in the first half of this year. The UK Defence Ministry says the deployment includes an aircraft carrier strike group and F-35B Lightning attack jets and surveillance planes, and 16,000 UK Army troops who'll be based in Eastern Europe from February until June. Last week, UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak announced that Britain will increase its support for Ukraine in the coming financial year to $3.19 billion. That's an increase of £200 million over the previous 2 years.
Now, our trade, 90% of which comes by sea, is the target of terrorists, proving that not only do our adversaries have the intent to target us, but they have a widening array of weapons with which to wreak havoc. And that's why I can announce today the UK will be sending some 20,000 personnel to lead one of NATO's largest deployments since the end of the Cold War.
In Guatemala, Bernardo Arevalo has been sworn in as the country's new president and Karen Herrera as vice president. The ceremony was delayed for hours without explanation, which led to protests. Demonstrators pushed through barricades and threatened to storm Guatemala's Congress. 65-year-old Arevalo won the August presidential runoff with a promise of restoring democracy and banishing deep-rooted corruption in the most populous country in Central America.
We will establish the foundation for generational development through processes of dialogue that will allow us to build the necessary trust to harmonize the diverse interests and aspirations of our society as a whole on 4 issues that will allow for ample consensus on education, on health, on development, and the environment.
The French island of Réunion has issued its highest weather emergency as Cyclone Belal brings strong winds. The authorities issued a violet alert and urged citizens to stay inside and avoid unnecessary travel. The storm is expected to reach its peak on Monday with speeds around 200 kilometres per hour. Cyclonic sea waves of up to 12 to 15 metres are also expected. A volcano has erupted in southwestern Iceland on Sunday, engulfing buildings in flames. An early evacuation was carried out for the second time since November. Authorities have built barriers of earth and rock in recent weeks to try to prevent lava from reaching Grindavik, which is 40 kilometres from the capital Reykjavik. But the latest eruption has penetrated the town's defences.
We had this eruption started just before 8 o'clock this morning. It was on the area where we have been expecting it to come, but unfortunately it went a little bit more south than we had hoped for. So it went inside the barriers that we have already built, and then also about 3-4 hours later we had another opening just outside the town of Grindavik.
Shibendu, as I said, there is indeed lots going on. Back to you.
That's right, Ollie. Thank you very much for joining us with those updates. And we're heading for a short break. Still to come on DT India Global. India's External Affairs Minister Subramaniam Jaishankar on a 2-day visit to Iran. And North Korea tests a new missile as its foreign minister travels to Russia for deepening cooperation across the board.
This is Dashrath Mahal or Dashrath Palace, which is thought to have served the home of Lord Rama in his younger days and also served as a capital of King Dashrath.
राम राज्य पूर्णतः 22 जनवरी को वापस आ रहा है। हम लोगों में एकदम हर्ष उल्लास है। जय श्री राम। पूरी अयोध्या मालूम दुल्हन की तरह सज गई है।
राम राज्य के दर्शन करने सब राज आएगा। ये पृथ्वी का ना राजा राम जी है।
अयोध्या में राम जी का भव्य मंदिर, दिव्य मंदिर बन रहा है। ये हमारे स्वाभिमान का प्रतीक है।
Iconic Ram Ki Pedi or the series of ghats on the bank of much revered river Saryu.
राम जी का राज्य था, राम जी का राज्य है, राम जी का राज्य रहेगा। राम 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 राम।
Welcome back. You're watching DT India Global. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. North Korea tested a new solid-fuel hypersonic missile with intermediate range. It said the launch was aimed at testing the reliability of new multi-stage high-thrust solid-fuel engine and an intermediate-range hypersonic maneuverable controlled warhead. The test coincided with North Korean Foreign Minister Ko Sun-hui's visit to Russia. The missile launch and the visit to Russia comes amid growing tensions on the Korean Peninsula. A series of intercontinental ballistic missile launches, the launch of first military spy satellite and Pyongyang's deepening ties with Moscow have all worried the US and its allies.
Our military instantly spotted and monitored North Korea's missile launch and closely shared related information with the United States and Japan. We strongly condemn the North Korea's missile launch, which is a clear provocation that seriously threatens the peace and stability on the Korean Peninsula.
And Japan's chief cabinet secretary has said North Korea may carry out further provocations.
We believe that there is a possibility that North Korea may carry out further provocative actions in the future, including launching various missiles. Japan will continue to work closely with the United States and South Korea and do our utmost to collect and analyze information as well as monitor the situation.
And Russia on Sunday welcomed North Korea's Foreign Minister Choi Son-hui for talks on deepening ties between the two nations. Ko met officials from the Russian Foreign Ministry and the North Korean Embassy on Monday. Later, she will have talks with her Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov as the two countries deepen economic, political and military ties. And DD India's correspondent Andrew Wood gets us more from Hong Kong.
This is supposedly a test launch. It's clearly in violation of United Nations Security Council resolutions that prevent or forbid North Korea from developing such weapons and having its own space program. But we haven't heard condemnation from Russia or China. Now, those countries are both members of the UN Security Council, and so presumably you'd think would support or would criticize anybody who tries to break UN Security Council resolutions. But so far they seem quiet. Russia and Korea, North Korea, they've been allies going back to just after the Second World War. And of course it was Russia that gave, or the Soviet Union, Stalin, that gave North Korea the go-ahead to invade South Korea in 1950. And they've stayed quite close, but they've become a lot closer over the past year, especially in the past 6 months, as we saw President Putin go to Vladivostok in the far east of Russia, which is right next to the border with North Korea. And North Korean's leader, Kim Jong-un, went to talk to him. They met there for a summit. Since then, it appears that North Korean missiles have been used by Russia in Ukraine. And the talk is that North Korea is benefiting from technology about launching missiles and so on from Russia too.
India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar is on a two-day visit to Iran. Dr. Jaishankar began talks with Iran's Minister of Roads and Urban Development in Tehran on Monday. The ministers had a detailed discussion on establishment of long-term cooperation framework in relation to Chabahar Port. Thoughts were also exchanged on the North-South International Transport Corridor. Newly appointed Bangladesh Foreign Minister Hassan Mahmood said India stood with Bangladesh when Bangladesh was in pursuit to continue the democratic process. Bangladesh Foreign Minister Hassan Mahmood said that despite external attempts to stir controversy during elections of 2014 and 2018, India's support for Bangladesh's democratic process was unwavering. Meanwhile, Foreign Minister also revealed plans for his first bilateral visit to India after accepting an invitation from his Indian counterpart, Dr. S. Jaishankar. The visit aims to further strengthen diplomatic ties, with the exact date to be decided later. Indian High Commissioner to Bangladesh, Pranay Verma, called on Bangladesh Foreign Minister on Monday. Verma said Bangladesh and India will be achieving greater momentum in bilateral relations, building on existing friendly ties. The Indian Army is celebrating the 76th Army Day with a grand parade in India's Uttar Pradesh capital city, Lucknow. Indian Army Chief General Manoj Pandey inspected the parade at the parade grounds. Uttar Pradesh's capital hosts only the second Army Day outside of the country's national capital, New Delhi, to commemorate Field Marshal K.M. Cariappa becoming the first Indian Commander-in-Chief of independent India. The parade is witnessing 6 marching contingents, military band comprising 5 regimental brass bands and 3 pipe bands. Artificial intelligence is being used to judge the best marching contingent, pipe band marching contingent with brass band.
उत्तरी सीमाओं पर हमारी सेना किसी भी स्थिति से निपटने के लिए पूरी तरह तैयार और सक्षम है। उत्तरी सीमाओं पर अपनी क्षमता को विकास करने के लिए हमने कई ठोस कदम उठाए हैं। हाल ही में इमरजेंसी प्रोक्योरमेंट के प्रावधानों के जरिए हमने कई आधुनिक उपकरणों की आपूर्ति की है, जिसमें नीश टेक्नोलॉजी के लैस अस्त्र शस्त्र भी शामिल हैं। सीमा क्षेत्रों में क्रिटिकल इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर को विकसित करने की दिशा में खास ध्यान दिया गया है और इसमें अच्छी प्रगति भी हुई है।
India's President Draupadi Murmu, who is the Supreme Commander of country's armed forces, extended felicitations to the Indian Army. For his part, Prime Minister Narendra Modi posted a video on his social media account. He said Army Day honours the extraordinary courage, unwavering commitment and sacrifices of the nation's army personnel. He called the army a pillar of strength and resilience. Chief of Defence Staff General Anil Chauhan extended greetings to all ranks of the Indian Army and veterans. He said unwavering dedication, invincible attitude and indomitable spirit of the army personnel are the bedrock of India's security. Moving on, ahead of the consecration ceremony of Ram Temple in Ayodhya, General Secretary of Sri Ram Janmabhoomi Tirath Kshetra Trust Champat Rai announced that the ceremony will take place at 12:20 p.m. on January 22nd.
तो लगभग सभी प्रकार की तैयारियां पूर्ण हो गई हैं। प्राण प्रतिष्ठा दोपहर 12:20 पर प्रारंभ होगी।
Briefing the media, Champat Rai said that the religious rituals will begin from January 16th and defending Lord Ram at the age of 5 years. This is standing alone idol is poised to take center stage during the ritual on January 22nd.
जिस प्रतिमा की प्राण प्रतिष्ठा होनी है वो आप सब जानते हैं पत्थर की है। 150 किलो से 200 किलो के बीच में उसका वजन है। खड़ी प्रतिमा 5 वर्ष का बालक का स्वरूप 18 जनवरी को प्रतिमा गर्भगृह में अपने आसन पर खड़ी कर दी जाएगी।
Let's now turn to other stories making news around the world. Thousands of German farmers protested against the government's plans for higher taxes on farming operations and fair prices for their products in Berlin on Monday. The protests are expected to draw up to 5,000 tractors, 2,000 trucks and some 10,000 demonstrators from around the country. Spain rescued 80 migrants who were stranded near Gran Canaria coast in 2 wooden boats overnight on Sunday. The rescued were transported on a Coast Guard vessel to Arguinan port, where they received medical attention from Red Cross. Denmark's new king, Frederik X, visited the Danish parliament on Monday as they performed their first official engagement in the new roles. The royals were welcomed by members of parliament. The succession took place as Queen Margaret abdicated after 52 years on the throne. Armenia has made it to the Oscars International Feature category shortlist for the first time with the film Amerikatsi. The film is a heartwarming story of a man jailed for wearing a tie. It is directed and written by Michael A. Goyan. The Tamil community in India and Sri Lanka celebrate Pongal on Monday with fervour and gaiety. Observed at the start of the Tamil month Thai, Pongal is a multi-day harvest festival dedicated to the sun god. The traditional dish prepared from the new harvest of rice boiled in milk with jaggery under sunlight. Devotees throng temples across the island since morning to thank for the abundance of the previous year's harvest and pray for a successful one ahead. The Assistant High Commission of India at Kandy celebrated Pongal too with traditional festivities at Matale on Sunday. And that's all for this edition of DD India Global. Let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X and Instagram. You can also find us online at ddindia.co.in. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India Global. Namaskar.